Okay, looks like we're live. Welcome, everyone. Don't have a huge audience here today, but hopefully we got some people online. First order of business is roll call.
Absolutely. For the Select Natural Resource Funding Committee, Senator Boner.
Here.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Representative Provenza.
Here.
Representative Roscoe.
Here.
Co-Chairman Cooper.
Here.
Co-Chairman Paxton.
Here.
All accounted for.
Okay, Bob, it looks like this is your show, so if you want to start us off with our first item here, we'll go through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess before we
Mr. Chairman, we can't hear him.
Does it help if I turn the mic on?
Immensely.
Anyway, Senator Boner, I was just thanking those who are going off the committee for the work that they've done, and obviously look forward to working with the rest of you. But Representative Roscoe and Representative Paxton, thank you very much for your support and the work you've done. Appreciate that. With that, we have 9 large projects this time around. As I was saying before we went live, we've got a lot more big projects and I think that's just a sign of the times. Cost is part of that, as you have discussed previously with the threshold. The first one is in Teton County. This is over Teton Pass. The bulk of the moose in Teton County live there at the base out by Wilson. And they are whacking
Let
those.
me stop you first. Do we want to, on our agenda, we have the, I think we have the increase first on the agenda before the, do we want to dispose of that before we move on, or how do we want to do that?
I would defer to Luke on that.
And honestly, Chairman, I think it's however you'd like to do it. I just kind of did it that way. I thought we could end on the big project bill, but I don't think it really truly matters. I think it's whatever the committee's discretion would be.
Go ahead with that first of all and talk about it just for a second, because it's on the agenda and the people listening in might be interested in the way it was laid out. So the first bill we have on here is Natural Resources Large Project Threshold Increase. It's sponsored by Select Natural Resources Committee, which may not be appropriate, but what we're attempting to do in this is the value of the dollar, as we all know, has certainly changed over the years. And I don't know, do you know when the last update was, Bob, that we actually did anything about this, or is this the original amount that we?
Mr. Chairman, 2005, when the trust was created.
So I think it may be time to take a look at that, and that $200,000 threshold seems really low to all of us, I think, and I think it's appropriate to at least to double that to 400,000, and that's where what the bill is all about. So, and as I understand it, our best way to handle this situation is to, we can discuss the bill all you want to right now. If anybody would like to discuss it, I guess we can go through it in detail, but that's, in essence, that's what the bill does, just doubles the amount of threshold from $200,000 to $400,000, which is still actually fairly low when it takes a lot of dollars to do anything in this area. So I think that what we need to do to proceed with this probably is just, I'm not sure that we even need a vote on it, but I think that Co-Chairman Cooper has agreed to carry this on the floor, and he can manage the bill, and then our good representative down here can probably take care of it on the House side when we get over to that. And so, is there anything else we want to talk about or discuss on this bill, or what's your feelings on the bill? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Budd, can you
tell us what the source of the other 200,000 would be? And you can explain that, how the funding would come for the increased threshold, please?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cooper, the money, this doesn't change the source of any of the funding or anything else. It basically just says that the board has the authority to approve projects up to a higher level. And you'll see as we go through the large projects today, there are a number of these that we would be already being able to be contracting now and not have to wait for legislative approval. And they're not gigantic projects like we do the Wyoming Range project or some of those. They're discrete projects. The Lakeview Canal is an example. Sims Slough, those kind of things. A river project, a headgate project, we're looking at probably somewhere, and the one that you looked at in August is a good example. We're looking at double on those, what they were. So the source of funding remains the same. It's just the authority for the board to move ahead and approve those projects.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Could you just real quickly clarify for everybody what that source is? Is it revenues from the trust fund? Is that where it comes from?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, yes, that's all revenue from the trust unless the legislature chooses to put money in, which you have done from time to time for specific purposes. But our source of revenue is all other funds at this point. It's basically earnings on the trust account.
And I think, the real strength of it is just what you said, that it allows us to move some projects forward. And with the rate of inflation that we're looking at right now, I think that's really important on material. Whenever we have to buy materials, it seems like price just goes up on everything that we do. And so it looks to me like that by expediting this, it would really expedite the process by increasing that to 400,000, give the authority where it belongs. And certainly that your group has done a great job over the years of making sure that money is spent in a responsible way. And so I think it's really past time probably to move this forward.
Mr. Chairman, time and money are the two things that it saves.
All right, I guess we've agreed how to dispose of this, sounds like, and we'll move it to the appropriate way. And sorry to interrupt you, Bob, but now we're back on the agenda as it's.
No problem, Mr. Chairman. The first project, as I said, is Teton Pass. It's the numbering, just so you know how the numbering works, the 09-22-016. Since we started, 09 is the month that the deadline is to get those in. This is the 22nd application, or in 2022, this is the 16th application. They're numbered as they come in. There's no priority order. When they're sorted and we work them, as you'll see here, they're in the order they ranked out by the board. So that's how the numbering works. This is a $35 million highway project going over Teton Pass. We have the opportunity to incorporate underpasses in there primarily for moose, although elk, bighorn sheep, deer will probably also use them. But the primary target is moose. It's $1 million from the trust. That matches $1 million that Teton County has actually placed in the trust. So they have a tax up there, a special tax for this purpose. As that generates money, we hold that money for them so that then we're able to match that one for one. It obviously increases our leverage significantly. So that's why in the bill, you'll find there that it says that there's appropriation of 1 million and an authorization for 2. The reason is you're appropriating 1 million out of our funds. The other $1 million is their money we're giving back to them. So it's a spending authority up to the 2 so we can spend their money back out. And you've seen that over time where we have a project and it's in phase 2 or 3 where those numbers don't match. That's always why that is. Mr. Chairman, any questions on that project?
Any questions from the committee? Any questions from those online? I'm thinking a good way to handle this too might be to ask for public comment on each one of these things as we go through them. So
Absolutely.
And did someone over here, did I see a hand?
Senator Boner.
Oh, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I had a question on the previous bill draft. So we're increasing the threshold to 400,000. A quick Internet search shows that inflation's gone up about 50% since 2005. Is there a reason why we're raising the threshold from 200 to 400 instead of something that keeps pace with inflation, something more like 300,000?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Boner, this came up at our meeting in August, and that was, I think, just the number. I believe Senator Cooper made the motion and selected that number. There's nothing magic about it. What I would say is that just my experience with the legislature, you're either behind or you're ahead, and you're never right on. So it was kind of an attempt to look at it and not have to do it every 3 or 4 years and come back. So that's, I think, what the cushion between the 2 and the 4 was. I don't think there's anything magic about it at all.
Okay, follow up?
No, Mr. Chairman, appreciate that. Maybe it'll be another 17 years before we get back around to it. So yeah, certainly appreciate it.
Representative Roscoe, is that your hand? I can't, we got, it's kind of compressed. It's hard for me to see. I have to put my glasses on.
Well, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I was just noticing that the overall inflation is a little bit different from what we're involved in here is the construction, excavation, and construction materials, I think, has gone up far beyond the overall inflation. I'm not sure about that, but that might be one reason we could justify the 400. Thank you.
Okay, did Senator Grew, did you have a question also?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question back on the last one. You said that, and you guys may know this, I just wanted to hear it out about how we're going to dispose of this bill. If we can't carry it, are we going to send it over to TRW, or are we going to carry it as a personal bill? What was or was it decided that natural resource funding can carry a bill? How'd that get worked out?
I think the appropriate place would be TRW. Is that correct, Director?
Mr. Chairman, I think what you discussed was an individual bill that would get referred to TRW because they've had their last interim meeting. So.
All right. Yeah, that'd probably be a better way to handle it.
Okay, as a member of the committee, I just wanted to let you know I'll do everything I can. So we'll bring it along. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I guess I better pay a little more attention to what you guys are up on the screen are doing. We kind of compressed you, so you're pretty small up there, and I had to put my glasses on to even see you. So anything else on the bill before we go back to the first project that we have here on the Teton Migration? Okay, any comments from the public on the Teton Migration? Do we have anyone online that's okay? All right.
Ready?
Director Bud, you're.
Second project is the Fishhook Sea Conservation Easement. This is Fishhook Ranch in Carbon County. It's a stunning piece of property, particularly if you're looking at it as a wildlife biologist or a habitat person. There is a large sage-grouse lek as you come into the place. That sits right on the corner of state land. Those birds all nest on this ranch. It's crucial winter range for mule deer. Those of you who've been down around Baggett Rocks know how that loads up with deer in the winter. The day we were there, they were just starting to come in. You have elk and moose habitat on the river. You have wintering bald and golden eagles. Obviously, you have fisheries values. It is pretty much what you would expect in Wyoming on a riverine system. He is very, very adamant that he does not want this developed. He wants this to remain as a ranch. He's 90 years old and wants to do that before his time has come, as he put it. But he wants to make sure that this piece of Wyoming remains unfettered, if you will. It is joined by an easement on the south side, another large easement on the river, and has a number of other easements, as you well know, Mr. Chairman, through that valley. 1,200 acres, there are 13.3 miles of streams. That's the river and the feeder streams that feed into it. It's a core area for sage grouse, crucial winter for mule deer. Basically, it is what we want to keep in this state. So a tremendous project sponsored by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. And as you can see, the leverage is good, 7-to-1. So for every dollar we spend, that we're getting 7 back.
Well, and this project, of course, is in my backyard, and we're seeing a lot of development right, really close to this property also. There's a subdivision now just up the road that was, previously this ranch was owned by another party, and they've chosen to subdivide the upper part of it. And so it's a real, I think, one of the best projects that we can possibly have. It's really in the right location, and there's a pretty good sized elk herd that roams around that Bag of Rocks area, and certainly the deer thing, and then the fisheries and Nick has been really into the fishing thing. I think that's what brought him into that country in the first place, and he's a good conservationist, I think, and I really do support this project. I think it's an excellent way to move forward with that beautiful piece of land down there. Okay, any questions from the committee? I put my glasses on so I can see you. Doesn't look like there's any from our folks that are here. All right, any public comment? We have anyone online? Okay, all right, go ahead.
The third project is the Lakeview Canal. This is in Park County. Co-Chairman Cooper, you may be familiar with this one. It's on the South Fork as shown. This particular diversion, there are two major diversions on the South Fork. This is one of them. The Cody Canal is the other. This one alone probably removes as many as 44,000 fish per year from the river. And those fish then get entrained in the canal, and there's a significant loss to the system. You all know Park County is highly reliant on tourism and outdoor recreation. 44,000 fish a year is a substantial loss. This project will rebuild the head gate. What we are proposing to pay for here is the fish bypass portion of that. So the remainder, the irrigation piece, all of that is being borne by the irrigation district and by Water Development Commission, which is their role. Our role is the wildlife piece, and so we're picking up that bypass. And it'll be a screen that will keep the fish out of the canal and return them back to the river. We've done, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 of these over the years. They all work really well. They're all built for the area they're in. Some of them, are simpler than others. But this one is and as you were talking earlier, as Representative Roscoe was saying, you look at the cost of materials, this one jumped up there pretty quick when you start looking at concrete and steel and those kind of things. But a very, very good project. This is from the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Again, good leverage, 4.16. So any questions, Mr. Chairman?
Questions from the committee? Put my glasses on again so I can see. Anyone online? Okay, any public comment from the folks that are in the room? Okay, Bob, we're ready to move then. Okay,
the fourth is the Wind River feral horse removal project. This is on the Wind River Reservation in Fremont County. This is, excuse me, Mr. Chairman. This is something that was funded by the legislature, I believe 2 years ago. Senator Boner, you can help me with this, but the legislature allocated funding, $400,000 to do one major gather. That's about what it costs. There are as many as 10,000 feral horses on the reservation right now. This was a request from them to do one more. They've also got two others that would be paid for. That would get their numbers to the target level, which is less than 1,000. The reason this is important is that as you've seen what horses can do, and it's a fairly small area if you look at the reservation. So you've got wild horses now in bighorn sheep summer range, and that's up at 9,000, 10,000 feet. You've got them in elk range all on the northwest corner of the reservation. You have them down in the fall and the winter. They come down and into the crucial mule deer winter range. It is a serious habitat issue and a serious natural resource issue. What we have proposed to do is to pay the balance for another gather. They've raised privately $130,000, the Wyoming Wild Sheep Foundation. We would match that at the $270. That would pay for one more gather, and they would then have all the gathers they need to do funded and hopefully get those done in the coming year. Again, we thought this was a a good example of the partnership we've created between the executive and the legislative branch, where you've gone in and said, you see a need, we're coming back in this time to help you with the need. Usually it's the other way around. You're coming back in on the backside with us. But I'd be happy to answer any questions, or honestly, I think Senator Boner may want to weigh in on this one. I know this is one that he worked on in the last couple of years. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd defer to him.
Senator Boner, you want to weigh in on this?
Well, just briefly, I appreciate the additional help from the Natural Resource Trust. I think this will, go a long ways. And so, about $400,000 for the current fiscal year. Obviously, that'll expire June 30th. So it's good to know that we'll have something in the queue ready to go for next fiscal year. And clearly a problem, as Mr. Budd laid out, and one of the advantages of doing this work on the reservation is we don't have all the federal requirements that you generally have with the BLM or Forest Service when it comes to Wild Horse and Burro Act. So this is something where we can just go out and take care of this issue while we have these sort of one-time funds, and hopefully it'll help the overall situation. That we don't need to go into more detail and think about the issues that these feral horses cause when they're overpopulated, such as they are. So good opportunity to go ahead and take care of this issue while we have the opportunity. Appreciate the thought from Mr. Budd and the Wildlife Natural Resource Trust.
Mr. Chairman, just to take a minute and explain the map that you're looking at up there. The yellow are horses. And if you look at those on the south end, what the legislature did was allocated funding primarily on the north end in the Owl Creeks, which if you look at that migration, that black line, set of black lines, that's deer migration on and off the reservation. You can see they go clear over to Jackson Lake. The south is the same thing. And those are deer migrations in and out of there. But if you look at that southern bunch of yellow, that's Temple Peak, which is one of their premier bighorn sheep herds. And that's where they're getting up into that 10,000 foot range. They're on their summer range, then they're crowding them down and they get to their seasonal transitional range. You got horses there. And then when they get to their winter range, you've still got horses. So it is a critical issue. And when you look at bighorn sheep populations, anything we can do to support them is pretty critical at this point in time.
So Director Budd, is there a number that we're looking at as far as removal of horses? Is there a number in that they're looking to eliminate from the range then?
Mr. Chairman, the estimates are as many as 10,000 feral horses on the reservation. They would like that target to be below 1,000.
Below 1,000?
Correct.
And so what would be the disposal? How would these horses be handled afterwards? I mean,
That's
got their own process of what they do with them.
Mr. Chairman, the tribes have a contract. They deal with that. They have a trucking company that handles it. So that's all worked out between them and their transport and ultimate disposal.
Okay. Questions from the committee? Questions from those of you online on the committee? All right, public comment. All right, seeing none, we're going to move forward.
Next is the SR Cattle Company Conservation Easement. This is in Sheridan County. Those of you you've all been to Sheridan County, as you go west out of Sheridan, you're headed out toward Wolf Creek, where Eaton's Guest Ranch is and that part of the county. This ranch is on Wolf Creek. It is right on Wolf Creek. It's a historic family, the Canes. The father of the people here was a president for me when I worked for Stock Growers, a very dear friend, and they want to keep this in ranching. They want to keep that open. It is joined by several other easements out there, which are at the flank of the Bighorns. You've got a number of those that retain that open space and habitat. Obviously, the fundamental species we all think of, deer and those kind of things, are prevalent there. One thing that a lot of people don't talk about is sharp-tailed grouse, and Sheridan has a good population of sharp-tailed grouse. They're not doing great, but they're not in trouble. But like any species where they're somewhat limited by where they live, if you pack houses in there, your sharp-tails don't have a place to live. So it's unique in that sense that that it's really important for sharptails. And if you've ever been up there hunting or been up there, you know how many there are in that area. The other thing, and you'll see this on a lot of these easements that people don't talk about, are migratory songbirds. And some of these riparian areas, particularly as you get into the more mesic areas like Sheridan, the Black Hills and that, you get a very unique set of migratory songbirds that use those habitats primarily in the summer. Some also winter there, but there are dozens of species of concern that use these habitats, and so that's why you see migratory songbirds on here as well. Again, great leverage, over 7. Historic Family Ranch keeps agriculture on the ground in Sheridan County, and another tremendous project.
Okay, comments or questions from the committee? Oh, we've got some up, Representative Roscoe, I see.
Well, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I was just wondering if any money, maybe some of this matching money, was raised by sort of unusual contributors, just because it was the migratory songbirds triggered this thought that maybe I was just wondering if maybe Audubon Foundation or people like that have contributed. I think that's an interesting part of this easement. And also the fact that I really appreciate the fact that this easement is has adjacent conservation easements placed on it, which just sort of magnifies our influence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Director Budd?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roscoe, there are a number of other, as with all of these, a number of other funders. Specifically, I do not think Audubon is in this one. They don't tend to do a lot of easement work. There are people who work in that space and people who don't. But the standard run of foundations and others who contribute always are solicited for any of the easements that the different people we work with do. The bulk of the funding will come from the Farm Bill programs. And we're in, just to put this in context, historically when we started, the state would be in these as high as 25%. We're in these now at 12.5. So we have cut our share in half because we are getting other funders coming in. So it's pretty significant when you see that leverage go from 3 to 7 or 8 or higher. And that speaks to the demand for this. It also speaks to the fact that we have gone out collectively, our partners and the trust and others, and made it quite clear that this is a valuable space that we need to keep, and people are willing to commit to that. So there are a number of private foundations that will commit to all of these easements.
Okay, anyone else? Questions? Okay, anyone online? Okay, with that, we'll move forward, I guess.
Next project is a Sims Creek Slough. For those of you who've worked in Uintah County, most things down there have something named Sims attached to them. It's a historic, wonderful family down in Uintah County. This is on the Bear River. We've been working on the Bear River now for about a decade and primarily removing push-up dams, which created a barrier for fish movement. This is another one, and what we've done, very similar to what we've done, Mr. Chairman, in your home county, is after about the third or fourth one, we go back to the sponsors and say we want a whole watershed view. We want to know what it looks like running down the road. This is the second in that full watershed view. So there will be more of these coming as we work our way down and up the river. It is a major issue. If you look at the species that is affected as Bonneville River cutthroats, the Bonneville River cutthroat was petitioned as an endangered species several years ago for the reason that they did not have access to their historic spawning areas. So we've been working there since 2006 to open Grade Creek and to open other streams, put in fish passage and put in screens to allow Bonneville cutthroats to access their historic spawning range. This gets them from the Bear River to those spawning areas and back. It's a pretty major deal if you look at it strictly from the Bonneville cutthroat perspective. There are other species that are involved. Bluehead sucker, I think, is one of them. That's another native fish, mountain whitefish, another native fish. And then you look at, anytime you do work on a river and you enhance it, you make habitats better for a wide variety of things, from mink to moose to mule deer to all the species that live in these riparian corridors. So another great project. They've done tremendous work. The individual in that photo there with Don Schramm was our partner of the year last year. David Kimball, who works for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Partners Program. So Trent, another great project. We're just working our way down the Bear River.
Okay, questions from the committee? Questions from those of you joining us virtually on the committee? All right, anyone else? Public comment? You're doing such a good job, Bob. We're just moving down these things in a hurry.
Mr. Chairman, the next is the Little Medicine Bow River. Again, this is a project that we've done several projects at the headwaters where we did headgate modifications. We did fish passage and all those things as you get further up into the Laramie Range. The proponents came to us a couple of years ago and said that they would like to start working. This would be in the area of the old Shirley Basin mines between there and town. There's an AML project in there that some of you may have seen where they're trying to restore some of that habitat. The river itself, when we last met with them a couple of years ago, we said, okay, we're at the point we need a whole watershed view. So this one came in this year. The initial request was considerably higher. This ranked really low in the initial review. We went back out in the field, did the field visit, came back and said, you're going to have to find additional funding. They found an additional $500,000. So it put us from a request of 800 plus down to 3. It is a great project. I've looked at how many of these, 2,000 in the last few years. This is one of my favorites. It really is well thought out. That'll bring you down into that country up there on the Shirley Basin on the plateau, get it down toward town, and probably we'll look at another phase later, which takes the river on all the way down into Medicine Bow. Benefits a wide variety of species, all the plain species, everything from antelope to sage grouse to sagebrush obligate bird species and others. It's good leverage, 2.87. And I think it's a project that people are going to be really proud to go out and see.
Okay. Questions from the committee? Anyone online? Any public comment here? All right, Bob.
The Ellsbury Ranch easement is in Crook County. This is a homestead family up there. They want this to remain in agriculture, the same as what you hear from all of our easement people come in, and they're pretty adamant they want to keep cows or sheep or growing hay. They don't want to see houses growing up out of their heritage. It's another great biological project. You've got turkeys, you have elk, you have mule deer, white-tailed deer. You have a number of migratory songbirds that are unique to the area. As I said before, the Black Hills really becomes kind of a magnet for things that we don't see in other parts of the state. And in addition, there are a number of amphibians and reptiles that are found there that are on this property. So again, when we look at down the road, somebody coming in and trying to challenge our ability to do the things we do in Wyoming through the Endangered Species Act, this is how you head that off, is you make sure that you've protected the habitats for those species and you can show it. Great leverage again, over 7. Another great historic ranch family wanting to conserve agriculture and wildlife habitat in the state.
Okay, questions from the committee? Any questions from the committee online? All right. Any public comment at all? All right.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roscoe put his hand up.
Who was? Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief comment about, I guess I've been seeing a lot of subdivision happening where I live, and this project, it just saves us so much if we can, conserve some of these properties that are being threatened by subdivision. So That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right. Director Bud.
The final project is New Fork 351. 351 is not a significant number, except it just means that we're working on the New Fork River where it joins Highway 351. You have to come up with, they can't all just say New Fork River, so we have identifying features for each project. That's what that is. It's in Sublette County on the New Fork River. This is a really cool project. Historically, there is a historic crossing, and that's where a lot of the Oregon Trail people would stop and they would rest there on the New Fork River. At the time they did that, there was an island out there. So the river came down and it cut two ways, went around and created an island. That has been lost. That's been rechanneled now to where there's only one channel except in extremely high water. This project goes way upstream to where their irrigation takeout is and restructures that because it's another push-up dam, and every year they push it up a little higher. This will put in a series of cross veins and allow that river to have passage for fish, then put in the irrigation infrastructure, move that to where it's not going to be as erosive, because right now it's on the edge of a cliff. Add pipe, get that to where that's not an issue, and then it will re-channelize both of those pieces of the river to where you're actually adding over a mile of river by adding the other channel. It puts it back in its historic floodplain. That will allow the river to flood where it should. That will create wetland habitats for moose, for amphibians, for juvenile fish, for fall use, late season use for sage grouse, blue herons, sandhill cranes, another tremendous project. And again, this is another one, when we talked earlier, that really shouldn't have to be a large project. And you can see if we raise that threshold, this one, we would already be working on it probably this fall. We're having to wait. This has sat now since March. We received this application in February. Because it's a large project, we're basically put it off for a year. So back to some of what we talked about, time and money, this is another example of one of those. But another really good project, fisheries project. The New Fork River is a major river in western Wyoming, as you know, and as we look at Colorado River issues coming up, it's probably smart that we're working in there.
Okay, questions from committee that are here? Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question more generally for you, Director. If I remember correctly, last year during the budget session, our big project bill had 4 projects in it. Is that correct? Yeah. So clearly we have an increase of projects, which I'm really excited about. I'm wondering, because I think this will be a question that'll come from other members, is the increase in projects due to that infusion of funding that we gave, so now we have more revenue stream to be able to fund projects? Or is this maybe something that historically isn't that like different and that I'm missing? Just because I've had 2 years with this committee, so some background on that would be helpful.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Provenza, that's a really good question. And the answer is probably not going to simplify this at all. We actually had less applications this year overall than we did the prior year. But there are a couple things that have happened. Excuse me. During COVID, a lot of things sat on the shelf. And so we got a dump, if you will, of large projects that had been pending. And then you throw inflation on top of that, and a lot of these projects that we would have just done, easily done 4 or 5 years ago, they have literally doubled in their cost. And so a project that would have been 195 is now 390. And that's what you're seeing happen on some of these. Lakeview Canal would be an example of that. The New Fork 351 is probably an example of that. So you have a number of factors out there that are working on why there are more this time. If you look historically, we've had as few, I think we had 1 year we didn't have any large project bill, but only 1 year. And then we had a period in the probably around 2012, 13, 14, where we would have as many as 14 or 15 in a year, most of those being easements because we were in the sage grouse phase where we had a ton of money dumped in the state, and we were able to match that and do a lot of sage grouse easements. But that's kind of what I think you're seeing happen, is we're cleaning the shelves. Now, what I expect in the future is more like this number. Even if the threshold goes up, we're going to see more projects that are full watershed projects. You're going to see inflation play into that. But that's where I think we are.
Okay. Any comments from the folks online over here? Committee members? Okay, public comment. Yes, go ahead. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair, and members of the committee. My name is, excuse me, my name is Richard Garrett. I'm a citizen of the state of Wyoming, born here and now live in Cheyenne. As many of you might recall, I've worked for at least a couple of different organizations that have supported these kinds of projects, these kinds of bills in the past. I am no longer representing them, so I'm here just out of my own passion for the work that you have accomplished in partnership with the executive branch. So I applaud each of you for that. And on a personal note, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your service in particular. It's just been an extraordinary privilege to get to know you in the legislature, not just in this way, but in so many others too.
Thank you.
So I'd like to speak in favor of both bills. I think the committee understands the value of our large projects. Conservation easements has been a particular area of interest of mine. Connecting that habitat together, as was earlier described, is important for migration and for the survival and thriving of all the species that are associated with those big game herds. Can never diminish the importance of sage grouse, that's for sure as well. As to increasing the ceiling, I think lots of great comments, and in particular, Senator Boner's observation that, well, maybe it'll be another 17 years before we come back to take another bite out of this apple and provide funding levels that are appropriate for our time and opportunity. I'd also observe that when the bill was originally passed in 2005, I believe, and Director Budd can correct me if I'm wrong here, I probably am, I believe the corpus funding level was projected to be $200 million. We've lost a lot of ground for a number of reasons for having not gotten quite to that level. We're seeing more funding as approved in last week's JAC in agreement with the governor's presentation of his supplemental budget. But we need to put more money into that corpus, and we've got an opportunity, I think, during this legislative session to possibly do that. I guess the only other thing that I would like to comment on is that all of these large projects provide tremendous economic benefit to the regions and the counties and the people that live there. It's not just about wildlife and habitat, it's about people and their ability to work in Wyoming and keep it, as one of the organizations that I used to work for describes, wild and working. And that's an important thing to remember. So I know that you all do, but I just thought I should underscore that. And then finally, I don't know if you all know this, but Mr. Budd has authored a book, and it's called Otter's Dance, and it's a remarkable series of stories based on his life experience working for our beautiful state. And I just want to thank Bob for sharing those stories with all of us. And I hope if you haven't had a chance to pick that book up yet, that you do so. I think you'll be rewarded for reading it. So with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Hey, any questions for Richard? Thanks, Richard, for your service over the years too, by the way. And I didn't know we had an author in our midst here. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Are you going to get a plug in here or where it's available or anything like that?
Wherever books are sold. My favorite place to get it is Second Story Books in Laramie. They're great bookstore, and but you can get it wherever books are sold. And if that doesn't work, let me know. I'll find one for you.
Okay, so I guess that brings us to the actual large project bill. And we've spent some time going through that, basically, the bill. And I guess this would be your final opportunity to have a comment on the bill itself. Anyone on the committee would like to comment on the bill itself? Oh, they got it up. I don't have to have my glasses on. I can see you guys now. Anyone online, any committee members online that would like to comment on the bill itself? Okay. Did I see your hand, Senator Grew? Go up there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to move the bill.
All right, bill's been moved. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Parenza. All right. Further comments or questions on the bill and the amendments on the bill? I don't think we need to go through it page by page because we've already covered that ground pretty well. So what's your pleasure? Ready for the vote? Question's been called. This is a roll call vote, requires a roll call vote. So
Absolutely.
go ahead, LSO vote.
Thank you. On sponsorship of 23 LSO 208, Senator Boner,
Aye.
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Representative Provenza,
Aye.
Representative Roscoe,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Cooper,
Aye.
and Co-Chairman Paxton.
Aye. All right, the bill is moving forward then. Any other final comments? That's we didn't even take us an hour, Bob. We're getting better at it. Yes, Richard, go ahead.
Members of the committee, my apologies. I should have mentioned this as well. As I understand from your earlier discussion, this bill very well may be an individually sponsored bill. If members of this committee are so inclined, I would urge you to each sign on to that bill to better ensure its passage through the legislative process. So with that,
All right,
thank you.
good idea.
Mr. Chairman, a couple housekeeping, just so you're aware. I think we talked about this at previous meeting, but the board did go through where we sit financially, and we had a very good earning year 2 years ago. So my proposal to the governor when we had our budget meeting was that the board has asked to allocate $5 million that are currently in the income account, which is the project account, and move that to the corpus of the trust. We asked for that to be matched with general fund. The Joint Appropriations Committee last week worked those governor letters and agreed to do that. So that would be a $10 million bump into the corpus of the trust. That would bring it to $200 million, which was what was hoped for 17 years ago, almost 18 years ago. And just so you're aware that that's out there, I think some of you may get questions about that. That's what that is. That was enabled by this committee several years ago when the question was asked, what if you have a good earnings year, can you put money in there? And the answer was no. So the act was amended to allow us to bring that proposal back to the Appropriations Committee and the legislature. Technically, we can't do it. You do it. You're the ones who allocate funding. But this is the first test of that, first trial of that, to where we would come in and say, yeah, we've got some additional funds. We'd like to build that corpus. And hopefully down the road, future boards, future directors will see that importance and continue to try and inflation-proof the fund so that it doesn't sit there and wither away when inflation eats it up. So just so you're aware of that, Mr. Chairman, it was a very cordial meeting with JAC, and I think we have good support for that. But
Okay. All right, any final comments, questions? Yes, go ahead, Representative Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Director, I was wondering if I haven't been able to do the math on what the last 75 million we put into the corpus, approximately how, and I know it varies, but how that will help us in in the next few years.
Director Bud?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roscoe, the target that we use is a 4% earning per year. We've exceeded that in most years. This year, I don't think we will. It looks like earnings right now where we're sitting are around 3%. So that's down a little bit. Obviously, the 75 million made up for that 1% that we are losing in earnings. It's massive change. So instead of having a dip where you don't have the money to fund projects, we're at a level that very close to where we would have been 2 years ago. Down the road, and I think in talking with the treasurer's office and the chief investment officer, I'm very confident we're going to earn well. I mean, we're going to be in that 4, 5, 6% range over time, but we'll have years like this where it's down a little bit. The bump we got a couple of years ago was significantly greater than that. And then that coupled with the reduction in requests due to COVID left us with some money there that we thought we could probably move without impacting the program. But yes, the 75 million is probably a lifeline if you look at what's happening with rates of return.
Okay, any other comments from the committee? All right, I guess I could just say that it's been a pleasure to be a part of this committee for this number of years, and I think we've done an awful lot of really good work, and especially appreciate Director Bud and the staff that he's worked with to move everything along. And there's sure some things I'm going to miss about being in the legislature, but there's a lot of things that I'm not going to miss too. And so when you guys go into session, for those of you that are still in here, on January 10th, I'll be sitting on a beach in Belize with an adult beverage in my hand, just so you know. So with that, if there's no other business, I get to use the gavel one last time. Meeting's adjourned.
Well deserved, Mr. Chairman.